Boy, doesn't it just seem like leaders from all over the world really want this war to happen? With the buildup of troops on the borders and the expansion of military alliances, making demands that everybody knows the other side is not going to accept, why does it just seem like all of these leaders worldwide want this war to happen? Well, it's probably because they do. Today, CBS News made a big mistake when they overplayed their hand and they put down a card that this channel has been predicting for a long time with this article: How the Ukraine Crisis is Already Hitting Americans' Wallets. And the byline was the U.S. economy has been hit with increased gas prices, inflation, and supply chain issues due to the Ukraine crisis. Not even 24 hours after the first tanks rolled into the Ukraine, CBS News is running this article that blames all the inflation problems in our economy on the Russia-Ukraine crisis. I've been saying this for months. They're starting a war on purpose to distract from their economic failures. They being the ruling class, the elitists in this world, the WEF, the Klaus Schwabs, the Larry Finks, the ruling central bankers all over the world. And they need the public to embrace the rally around the flag syndrome in order to maintain their grip on power that they have very quietly put into place using COVID-19 as cover. And now that it looks like the pandemic is drawing to a close, they're not willing to give up that power, i.e. Justin Trudeau, and they're trying new tactics to keep the public angry and afraid and distracted from what they are doing. And folks, if you're sitting there saying to yourself, they would never do that, they would not let that happen, well, I've got a bridge I want to sell you, because they have been doing this for hundreds of years. This is absolutely nothing new. The ruling class has been doing this to the peasant class for centuries, and I point you to the theory of diversionary foreign policy. Now, diversionary foreign policy is a much debated theory of international relations that identifies a war instigated by a country's rulers in order to distract from its own domestic strife. In this case, when things get bad at home, what better way to get the public to avoid being too angry at you than to give them some foreign boogeyman to direct all their anger at, and to project all of your failures onto this foreign boogeyman in order to maintain public support at home. And history is full of examples of this. You can take Bill Clinton lobbing missiles into Iraq and Afghanistan in the late 90s to distract from his sex scandals. You could take Donald Trump lobbing missiles into Syria to distract from some of his scandals that were going on early in his presidency. You could take a look at the Falkland Islands invasion, where the Argentinian military junta was absolutely running their economy into the ground. So why not invade the Falkland Islands? They figured the UK was an empire in decline and would never defend those islands halfway around the world. Whoops. Or how about the 1904 Russo-Japanese War? There was worker strikes all over Russia that was leading to rioting and civil unrest. So why not attack Japan? Japan wasn't going to be able to stand up to Russia, right? Whoops, that didn't work out so well for the Russians. And you'll find throughout history that diversionary foreign policy is pretty much a 50-50 gamble. Sometimes it works, and sometimes the public rallies support for their leader, and sometimes it totally backfires, and the government that instigated the conflict quickly falls, as was the case with the military junta in Argentina and the fall of the czars in Russia. Now, I've been saying on this channel for a while now that the defining attributes of 2022 and 2023 are going to be social and civil unrest, widespread demonstrations, even rioting, possibly even civil wars, stemming from this global inflation problem that we see developing. An inflation problem that has not been caused by the Russian aggression towards Ukraine or by NATO expansion towards Russia, depending on which side of the fence you're on. No, that is not the cause of this inflation. The cause of inflation has been central banks' easy monetary policy that has made the ruling class inexplicably wealthy at the expense of the now vanquished middle class and the poor. Well, we've been talking for a while now about how when it gets too expensive to eat, people get pissed off. People get angry, and that tends to lead to civil unrest. And think about what we've seen in the last couple of years, not just here in the States, but worldwide. We've seen here in the States the BLM, the Antifa riots. We've seen January 6th. Last year, there was widespread rioting in South Africa. We saw demonstrations and riots all over Europe in the fall protesting the COVID restrictions. Just more recently, we've seen in Canada with the truckers' protest. There's another trucker protest that's ongoing here in the States. Civil and social unrest is gaining steam worldwide, and world leaders have noticed. Oh, you bet world leaders have noticed. And they need to figure out a way to get out of it because they know the inflation problem is going to get worse. And that's why this Russia-Ukraine conflict is perfect. Everybody benefits. Everybody except for the Ukraine, that is. Everybody benefits. Vladimir Putin benefits because he gets to carve out another chunk of the Ukraine and bring himself a little bit closer to rebuilding the Soviet Union, something he's wanted to do for years. Olaf Scholz over in Germany, he benefits because he gets to distract from the absolute destructiveness of Greens in their energy policy, is about to bankrupt Germany because they can't afford to keep the lights and the heat on for much longer. Well, now he gets to blame everything on Vladimir Putin. He gets to blame it all on Russia. Same goes for the rest of Europe. The reason why you can't afford to eat or heat your house has nothing to do with the European Central Bank and their negative interest rates causing ballooning inflation or the easy monetary policy. No, it's all because of the Russian aggression. Here in the States, what better way to deflect from the inflation problem that Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve have created with the blessing of two presidents, one Republican and one Democrat? It's not a left-right thing, folks. Well, what better way to deflect the public anger over the fact that the cost of living is going up at an extraordinary rate than to engage in a military conflict overseas? Now everybody is basically forced to rally around the flag. If you oppose the government now, then surely you are on the other guy's team. You are a traitor. You're engaged in treason. And that is exactly the kind of language that we're getting from the mainstream press now, isn't it? And here we are just one day after the first Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine, and CBS News is already running these stories. Not even one day. The shooting hasn't even really started yet. There's been some shelling, but the widespread conflict really hasn't started yet. And already they're telling us an inflation problem that's been brewing for years is being caused by a one-day-old conflict. Now, in the interest of fairness, the conflict in the Ukraine is going to take pre-existing inflation problems and make them much worse. Most of Europe's energy flows through the Ukraine. The Ukraine is the breadbasket of Europe. It's the single largest exporter of corn and wheat in Europe. So yes, the prices of food and the prices of energy are going to go higher because of this war. But they're already at historical highs because of the pre-existing inflation problem. And another thing, you also have a lot of powerful lobbies here in the States that have been pushing for this war. And if you think I'm kidding, what are some of the biggest exports in the United States? Natural gas in the form of LNG, grain in the form of wheat, corn, and soybeans. Oh, and weapons. Watch how many F-35s get sold in the next couple of years now. Because the U.S. is going to sell a lot of weapons now that militaries all over the world are going to start arming up, and then their adversaries are going to start arming up more, which means an arms race. Very good for Lockheed Martin. Very good for Raytheon. And look to the north in Canada. A few days ago, the #1 story in the world was how Justin Trudeau is using a terrorism law to absolutely freeze political dissidents out of society, to make them complete outcasts. If you think I'm kidding, these people can't pay their rent, they can't pay their utilities, their doctors, their food, nothing. Justin Trudeau has taken everything they have. And Canada's banks are willing participants in this, more than happy to freeze all the GoFundMe or all the personal assets of all the people who dare to speak out against that pansy little wannabe tyrant. But of course, Justin Trudeau is just a puppet. The man who's got his arm elbow deep up his backside, controlling his every move, is Klaus Schwab. Besides being a living, breathing caricature of a James Bond villain, is the founder of the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab has made very clearly that his agenda is for you to own nothing and be happy. He wants to control everything. He wants him and his select little cabal of elitist bankers and properly programmed little Justin Trudeaus to control everything for everyone. There is no place in Klaus Schwab's world for people who think like you and I do. What better way to seize more power than to make the public afraid of this big foreign enemy, i.e. Russia? So they've already telegraphed that the inflation problem is now going to get a lot worse, which it will. Their next move is going to be to force central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, on us. And if you really want to know why that's a terrible idea, you can check out this video that Joe Brown just did over at Heresy Financial. I'll put a link in the description down below. That video should terrify you. And Joe Brown is spot on in that video. They will use CBDCs to control every facet of your life. Of course, there are ways you can protect yourself from this. You can opt out of their system, at least partially. You can preserve your wealth by owning physical precious metals like gold and silver, or you can own cryptocurrency. Do not leave your cryptocurrency on centralized exchanges, because Canada has shown what their next move is going to be in that department as well. They're now targeting cryptocurrency exchanges to try to freeze people's assets. But once your crypto is off of the centralized exchanges, they can't touch them. So this is the 1,000,007th reminder on this channel to get your coins off of Coinbase or any other centralized exchange. Don't leave them there. Put them in your own wallet that you control the keys to, like the Ledger Nano X, which is my personal choice that I use. There is a link in the description down below to that if you want to check that out. Full disclosure, that is an affiliate link. Now, folks, not to engage in any kind of war profiteering, but this is a finance channel, so I would be remiss if I did not mention some of the trends that we're going to see coming out of this. At least for the next couple of weeks, some of the best investments are going to be anything surrounding energy, food infrastructure, and precious metals. And if you want to know more about this situation and the ongoing fertilizer crisis and what it means for global food prices, you can check out this video I did about how corn is going to be particularly affected by this situation. Thanks for watching. Till next time, live small and dream big.